Every pro was once an amateur, and every expert was once a beginner. Welcome to the DYA Network, where we're on a mission to bring you essential resources and cutting edge information to help young athletes attain their maximum potential while developing the champion within. I'm your host, David Edwards, and welcome to the network. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DYA Developing Young Athletes Network that we call Network Nation, and welcome to our Athletes Tip of the Week Friday. Now, today's Tip of the Week Friday, I wanted to add into something to support it, something I've talked about before with developing the athlete, and that's building that foundation, the structure, the development of an athlete. We found this on YouTube. Tim Grover was Michael Jordan's trainer, and he's in an interview. I believe this is with GQ Magazine. I'll give all this information at the end. But everyone listen to this because he talks about what it took to build the greatest basketball player of all times. It's some key things he points out here that he dealt with developing him that I think is important that everyone listens to. It's not just about basketball, but if you're a trainer working with athletes, if you're a coach, if you're a young athlete, there's some great things in here dealing with accountability. There's some great things dealing with here looking at before we get bigger and faster and stronger and quicker, things we should work on. Everyone listen to this, and I'm going to let part of this that I recorded go beyond just him talking about training, giving some of his backstory and some other athletes that he's working with. Let's take a listen, and then after this, we'll debrief. So here he is, Tim Grover.
Name is Tim Grover. I worked with Michael Jordan for 15 years. Everyone knows me as his trainer, but my official title was a sports enhancement specialist. If you walk into a gym and I've worked with you for 2 weeks, you're not my client. If I passed you a ball for one day and I shot video of you, you're not my client. I define a client of mine who's worked with me for numerous years. Scottie Pippen, numerous years. Charles Barkley, numerous years. Hakeem Olajuwon, numerous years. Michael Jordan, numerous years. Kobe Bryant, numerous years. Dwayne Wade, numerous years. I mean, those are the top individuals. I have others that have had successful careers. I played college basketball at University of Illinois at Chicago. I've always been a basketball buff, so I actually did my thesis on strength and conditioning for basketball players. When I graduated college, I had a master's degree in exercise science, and I always knew I wanted to train professional athletes. The only way you could really train professional athletes was working for a professional organization. I wanted to work more with individuals. So I actually wrote letters to all the players on the Chicago Bulls organization. And back then, there was no email. I wrote 14 letters to 14 different players. There are 15 players on a basketball team. The one person I did not write the letter to was Michael Jordan. I didn't get any response back, but I did get a call from the athletic trainer, Mark Feil at the time, saying, hey, we have a client that may be interested in your services. We want you to meet this individual, be at the house at 1 o'clock. So I go over there, I knock on the door, and guess who opens the door? I got a chance to sit with him for 30 minutes, told him what my philosophies were, what I could do for him, and he was looking for somebody that wanted to work directly with him. When you work with a team, you have a certain schedule. You're set on whatever the team schedule is. He wanted somebody that was a little bit more flexible, and then somebody that would focus in on his body, because everybody's needs are a little different. That was my path to him. I said, give me 30 days, let's see what happens. And 30 days turned into 15 years. He had gave me a list of what he was doing before. I said, tell me what you'd like to incorporate, what you'd like to keep out of this program. He goes, well, I want to start fresh. I want to start totally fresh. So my first thing with him was, all right, I don't care how fast you are, how high you jump. I said, none of that matters if you're constantly getting injured, if you're starting to have little nagging injuries. And one thing that he was very susceptible to was groin pulls and ankle injuries. So I said, let's address those things first. The more healthy you are, the better you'll be able to play. And I said, let's worry about being quicker, stronger, faster later. And most people put the concept of we need to make you quicker, stronger, faster first. The quicker, stronger, faster you make an individual, the more susceptible they are to injuries. Because they don't know how to handle that extra speed. They don't know how to handle that extra quickness. They don't know how to handle that extra power. When you do those things, You got to learn how to stop too. So everyone teaches you how to go, go, go. No one teaches you how to stop. So my big philosophy was all right, let's deal with the injuries that you have. Let's take care of those things first. And by doing that, the more healthier you get, it's automatically going to improve your game. His obsession to win and to compete on the basketball court and everything he does was the same way that I felt. My obsession to help an athlete get better, to keep them injury-free, to play every single game. And if something didn't work, it was like, I always felt it was like my fault. If he missed a game-winning shot, even though I wasn't out on the basketball court, well, what could I have done better? If he was more fresh, if he was in better condition, or if he turned an ankle, or if he jammed a finger, I'd automatically start thinking in my head, did I do too much? Didn't I do enough? Why did I leave that exercise out? I should have done this. So it's the constant rewind of everything over and over again to do it next time even better. Everyone knows Michael is a huge foundation and fundamentals guy. All the crazy stuff that you see him doing in the air and all the fancy moves, he never practiced those. He practiced the fundamentals because he knew if he could master the fundamentals, master the foundation, those other moves would automatically come. That was the same philosophy I had. We started off with just the basic compound movements that you would see any strength and conditioning individual do. Anything from bench press and dumbbell presses to cleans to deadlifts to squats. All the basic stuff to build the foundation first. During the off season, we would go anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. As we got closer to the season, the intensity increased and the time became a little short. It would be about an hour to 90 minutes. And then once the season started, the workouts were anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. If there were certain things he just didn't want to do, he would always say, no gimmicks. I want proven stuff, I want proven facts, I want proven results. Because that's what he was all about. He was about proving himself every single game, every single practice, that he was the best athlete, the best basketball player every single day. A lot of trainers come in and they ask the client, how do you feel? It's your job to know how the client feels. You should have paid attention to how many minutes he played, how physical the game was, whether they won or lost, what kind of mental state this person is after a win, what kind of mental state is he in after a loss. And back then, remember, a lot of the games weren't even televised live, so you'd have to stay up late. I had to record the games on and then get up early the next morning and watch them before I could see my client. I was as obsessed as he was, but I needed to know. Now everyone, you have the Fitbits that, count the person's step. I would literally write down how many steps he took every single basketball game. I have pieces of paper still now. I would rewind it, watch it again, rewind it, watch again, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how many steps he took in the first quarter. This is how many took in the second. These how many took he took to the left. This is how many took to the right, forward, back, all this stuff. So that way I could understand which body part and which angle he used most, which one he used less. And the training programs were totally developed around that methodology. If you look in a game, and you notice that they have a tendency to pull 50% more to the right and only 20% to the left. Well, if you're going equal distance when they're training, it's not going to correlate to the court. He would go so much more in one direction, you didn't want to overuse that side, so you'd put the emphasis there. But that was the adjustments that somebody who's obsessive, you notice and you pay attention to. You're not going to take a superstar who's that good and increase their abilities by 10% during an off season. It's just not going to happen. They're looking for that 1% of how can I get better. Every single year, it has to show improvement. If it doesn't show improvement, then I'm not keeping up with them. So I would tell Michael, I'm going to create more power, more strength, and more force for you. Now it's your job to learn how to control it and what you do with it. That's not my expertise. Whether I worked with Michael or not, he was still going to be the greatest basketball player ever. I helped him stay there a little bit longer. When we first started training him, we always did it after practice. With the amount of minutes he was playing, the physicality and so forth, I was like, Michael, we have to make this adjustment. I said, there's just not enough time. Let's move it before practice. Let's make it the first thing you do do in the morning. After each workout, after each game, after each practice, I would ask him one question. I would say 5, 6, or 7. And he would either give me a number or he would put up a hand. So if he did this, that means be at the house at 5 a.m. If he did 6, it was be at the house at 6. It was time to be at 7. And that's how the Breakfast Club evolved. He invited Scottie Pippen and then Ron Harper, and they would work out every single morning. Big elaborate setup in the basement downstairs. Each one had a little different program because they all had needs that were particular to those individuals. And afterwards, if you showed up for the workout, you got a chance to eat breakfast upstairs. Those guys never missed a workout. They never missed a workout. Because if you missed a workout, the tongue lashing and the trash talking Michael would talk to you at practice that next morning, you're better off making it to the workout and not having to hear his mouth than to show up at practice knowing you missed the workout. I don't consider it tough. I consider it accountability. He was like, if I train this hard, I play this hard, I practice this hard, if I can go 38 minutes in a game and come to practice the next day, be taped up, ready to go, and practice as hard as I possibly can, why can't you? People know the game was so much more physical back then. Nowadays, you can go around the players. Back in those days, you had to go through them, around them, over them, under them. You had to develop all those things. So the Detroit Pistons were his main nemesis, but it was also like he wanted to be known as the most dominant player ever. Michael was up for anybody. He didn't care. Every game, every practice, every off day was circled on Michael's calendar. He would go into practice wanting to destroy anybody and everybody in practice. And he said, the harder I practice, the easier the game will become. He did everything to an extreme so it would actually make the games much easier for him. It worked. Every single practice, every single training session, every single game, Michael always gave you a wow moment.
So some key things I wanted to point out there. I think he done a great job kind of explaining, not only when we look at this, think of this beyond just basketball, but looking at helping an athlete develop as a whole. I always talk about you have to start with building that foundation first. And what I like he talked about with helping not only Michael Jordan, but other athletes as well is, again, building that foundation. It's so true that the first thing we need to do is look at how is that quality of movement, getting back to those. I always talk about those primitive, those primal movements that we deal with that you teach young athletes. Those are so important. And some of those that a lot of you should be thinking about now, especially younger athletes, these are pro athletes, are those basic movements and dealing with learning how do I do a push-up, a pull-up, a dip, those things. How do I learn to crawl as far as a bear crawl? Those things are great beginning fundamentals and looking at those compound movements, those basic things. But what he also talked about that was real critical is that when we start talking about injuries, and you got to take care of those first, because if you listen to some of my other episodes, I always talk about is that you have to look at not just injury prevention. It has to be rolled into your program, because if I'm healthy, I can perform. And if I improve some of those inefficiencies or those compensatory patterns that can cause an injury, I'm just naturally going to get better. And if you listen to that part, he was talking about Michael Jordan starting from ground zero and looking at his movement patterns, understanding the athlete. You got to understand the athlete also from a mental perspective. There's a lot of great things he talked about there. And one thing I like about it, too, is that the accountability, the Breakfast Club, is some of you athletes that are not playing an individual sport, that are on teams. How important is that? If you're putting in 110%, and you have a focus as a team to get better, well, that's where we look at leadership. It's not arrogance. It's when I want to succeed and I'm putting in this work, I'm expecting that out of my teammates too. It's different if I'm not doing it, I'm expecting it of others. Coaches, I think that's a great example there, as well as parents, is that what kind of work are we putting in? I could go on and on about this. Everyone, if you want to hear this complete interview, this was on Google. You can look up how Michael Jordan's trainer helped him become the GOAT. And for those that don't know what GOAT stands for, it stands for greatest of all time. Again, that you can look up on Google. It's on Google it. It's on YouTube. Again, these are great things to point out. listen to our Monday's episode. I get to more building the foundation. One thing I forgot to add in is a number of athletes, since we're dealing with a global pandemic, have not officially been training with their teams and coaches. So one thing you really have to keep under consideration and watch is athletes being deconditioned, especially if sports start back up this fall. That's something we have to look at. And I think something that's really important we have to look at is screening, the starting process or getting back into sports, and how do we do that? So listen Monday, I'm going to go over some things dealing with deconditioning and screening, and also as it relates to today's episode, the foundation and building the athlete. Take a look at some of the videos. We started releasing videos last week. You can go to our site. We did start our YouTube channel. We're starting to develop it more. One thing I talk about there in one of the videos is something simple as athletic stance. It is a foundation of development with other movement patterns. It's kind of tying into what Tim was making reference to here, is that building that foundation before you can do some of those compound movements he talked about. Let it be a deadlift, a clean, let it be a squat. Well, you need to understand the foundation of development with simple things. Think of an athletic stance. How many athletes don't really know how to do it? You'll be surprised. Check out our videos, and with balance, we have something there for you as well. Hey, everyone, visit our website at the dyanetwork.org for more information on ways to help the young athlete develop. And if you could do us a favor and leave us a rating or review, and please go out and share this episode, pass it along. We would really appreciate it. Until next time, remember, give 100% in life pursuing your dreams and never give up. Take care.